The 1981 film Roar follows a man who lives peacefully among wild animals in Africa until his family visits, and all hell breaks loose. But the real hell happened behind the scenes, where 70 members of the cast and crew were injured on set. And that's just the beginning. So, today we're going to take a look at the insane story behind Roar, the most dangerous movie ever made. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other movie stories you would like to hear about. Okay, now let's take a look at some pretty awful movie co-stars. In a modern Hollywood production that called for dangerous animals in a scene, the director would likely just use CGI to insert the creature into the film. But that wasn't an option for Noel Marshall, so he used real lions. And not just lions. Once principal photography began in October of 1976, a full menagerie of animals were brought onto the set. The animal cast included 132 lions, tigers, leopards, cougars, and jaguars. And those were just the big cats. Less clawed but equally dangerous was a 10,000-pound bull elephant named Timbo. The inspiration for Roar came from a real-life experience of director Noel Marshall and his wife Tippi Hedren, who first got the idea for the movie after traveling to Africa. The couple visited a game preserve in Mozambique where they saw an old building filled with a pride of lions. After that, they came up with the premise of a scientist living in harmony with the lions, protecting them from hunters. The couple figured the film would be set in Africa, but shot in California. So, in 1971, they started to raise lion cubs at their residential home in Sherman Oaks, California, which is the same city where they filmed Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Very Africa-esque. Noel and Tippi also shared the house with their 3 children. Marshall and Hedren actually thought they were being safe. They reasoned that raising the lions with their children would minimize the chances of the cast and crew getting attacked once production commenced. The director's son, John Marshall, recalled living in the house with lions for about 6 months. He joked that they referred to them as teenagers because at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're passed out, they could kill you. And when they don't kill you, you develop trust. I bet those kids looked like big hors d'oeuvres to those cats. In a development that probably didn't make the insurance company too happy, maulings occurred frequently on the set of Roar. You'd think the production wouldn't be too eager to let that be known, but on the contrary, Noel Marshall left several of the real-life big cat attacks in the final cut of the movie. That includes scenes in which both his own stepdaughter and wife were so grievously injured that they had to be hospitalized. That atmosphere naturally created a lot of fear, and the actor's real-life distress is visible on the screen. So not only was Marshall not winning any Best Director awards for this movie, Father of the Year wasn't in his cards either. By all accounts, Marshall repeatedly put his cast and crew, once again including his own family, at tremendous risk to get footage. According to his son John, Marshall refused to call cut even when his actors were crying out for help. According to film critic Matt Singer, the actors in Roar look like hostages who are being forced to play roles at gunpoint. He also mused that Roar's ostensible message is one of peaceful interspecies cohabitation, but that message is contradicted by scene after scene of lions wrecking things, eating things, jumping on things, and generally scaring the crap out of everyone they meet. Tippi Hedren's teenage daughter, Melanie Griffith, who later made a name for herself in films like Working Girl, Something Wild, Pacific Heights, and The Bonfire of the Vanities, was cast in Roar, and the experience proved traumatic for her. In fact, she quit the project at one point, saying she didn't want to end up with half a face. But unfortunately for her, she came back, only to be bit and clawed by a lion. Griffith needed facial reconstructive surgery to fix the damage. Adding insult to injury, the scene where Griffith gets attacked can be seen in the finished movie. Tippi Hedren wrote a book in 1988 about the making of Roar, called The Cats of Shambhala. Bizarrely, she hoped that her story about the production of a movie where people were repeatedly mauled by lions would show the possibilities of human big cat relationships. It's difficult to comprehend, but evidently she still felt that way even after she and her family nearly got killed by the great cats. For the record, Hedren took her fair share of abuse during production. She developed gangrene after Timbo the elephant crushed her leg between his trunk and tusk. She was bitten on the back of the head by a lion. Plus, she suffered leg fractures and needed skin grafts after getting thrown by Timbo while she was riding him. Once again, much of these attacks made the final cut and can be seen in the movie. Noel Marshall's son, John Marshall, acted in Roar and performed many other production tasks. Like the rest of the family, John did not escape the shoot unscathed. In another on-camera incident that happened very early in the production, a male lion bit Marshall's head and refused to let go. It took 6 men 25 minutes to remove him from the lion's grasp. In the end, he received 56 stitches. For most of us, an incident like that would say, maybe this job isn't for me, but it didn't deter John from returning to production. In fact, he went back to work only 2 days later. The show must go on. But does it? Perhaps out of some sense of father-son loyalty, John Marshall was the only family member who was willing to promote Roar during its re-release in 2015. In interviews, however, he said that he still gets nightmares from the shooting and putting any sense of loyalty to the side for the moment. He also had some harsh words for his father. Dad was to do that to his family. Yeah, but did they ever work for James Cameron? Oof. Noel Marshall was the writer, director, and star of Roar, and he had the injuries to prove it. In fact, Marshall wound up with so many bites, some of which were filmed and some of which weren't, that he eventually developed gangrene. The director needed to be hospitalized for 6 months because of the condition, as well as the multiple leg injuries he sustained after a lion dragged him around the set. It took him years to recover. I guess that's suffering for your art. Jan de Bont was the cinematographer for such legendary movies as Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, and Basic Instinct. But Roar was the Dutch cinematographer's very first U.S. shoot, and it was almost his last. Filming wild animals at close range obviously came with risks. De Bont got scalped by a lion and needed 120 stitches in order to reattach his skin. Actor John Marshall remembers assuming the production would need to find a new director of photography because he assumed that there was no way De Bont would return. But like a true professional, and maybe madman, De Bont completed shooting the movie. When he did, Marshall was amazed. Roar was filmed in Soledad Canyon, which is about 50 miles north of Los Angeles, California. And while the Golden State is also known for its great weather, it's also known for wildfires. Yeah, out-of-control blazes are a thing in California, and before production wrapped, the set of Roar was nearly destroyed by 2 separate wildfires, as well as a flood. The deluge took out a number of lions, washed away the set, and wiped out some of the completed footage and film equipment. Several lions escaped during the flood, forcing local law enforcement to shoot 3 of them. These natural disasters set production back several years and cost millions of dollars. Tippi Hedren and Noel Marshall got divorced in 1982, and, not surprisingly, Marshall's son John believes the disaster that was Roar had something to do with it. According to John, Melanie was Noel's stepdaughter, but was Tippi's real daughter. He believed the fact that his father kept putting the then 17-year-old girl in such dire jeopardy left an intense impression on her mother. While other factors might have played a part, John's theory seems pretty easy to believe. Noel Marshall thought he could film Roar in 6 months with a $3 million budget. However, when lions are the co-stars in a movie, there are bound to be complications, and complications there were. Marshall and his DP, Jan de Bont, were forced to film the scenes in a documentary style, oftentimes covering the action with 8 Panavision 35mm cameras. The scene where Marshall drives a Jeep with tigers riding in the back alone took 2 weeks of rehearsal. And since the actors frequently required hospitalization and natural disasters continued to destroy the sets, the film was repeatedly delayed. In the end, Roar took 5 years and cost $17 million. Much of the movie ended up being personally funded by Marshall and Hedren after their financiers backed out. Smart financiers. For all of the literal blood, sweat, and tears that went into Roar, it didn't even get released in North America when it was completed in 1981. Hollywood simply lost interest after all the production delays. Hollywood, so fickle. It did screen in various theaters around the world, but only brought in a paltry $2 million at the box office. Decades later, however, in 2015, Drafthouse Films finally put Roar on the big screen in the United States. The company re-released the picture on 6 theaters nationwide, with an expansion that spring and a DVD release in the summer. The film was also screened at the South by Southwest Festival. In interviews, Alamo Drafthouse founder Tim League described the film as this great little undiscovered treasure that we're hoping to find a whole new audience for. That's one way of putting it. So what do you think? Have you seen Roar? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.